if you were looking for home games, you found us. Excellent. Well done. I'm Scott Radley from the Hamilton Spectator and 900 CHML. On the other end, that's Steve Milton from the Hamilton Spectator. Beside him, Bubba O'Neill, CHCH TV Sports. I'll get it right. And beside him, Rick Zamprin from 900 CHML Radio. And Bubba, there are increasing calls, including a letter now from 200 human rights organizations calling on a boycott of Beijing for the Olympics this winter, pointing to, well, calling them the genocidal games and pointing to human rights violations and on and on and on. We know about the two Michaels that are held hostage in prison over there, the two Canadians. Is this something that we should seriously, and when I say we, I mean free countries and participating countries of the IOC, is this something we should seriously be considering at this point, a boycott of the Olympics again?
I'll be quick with this one. The answer is no. And who are these special groups? Who are they representing? Are they representing all four of us? Are they representing me? Are they representing Canadians? At the end of the day, what do boycotts accomplish? The games will continue. The games will go on. At the end of the day, who are being punished? The athletes. The athletes that spend 4 years to prepare for these games and then are controlled by someone else saying that they don't want to go to the game. So if the COC make that decision, that's one thing. But these special interest groups, I generally don't. I personally generally tend to ignore them.
I think without a doubt, I think every athlete, whether they're from Canada or another country, and has any self-respect, would want to boycott if the two Michaels were returned to Canada. We know it's not going to happen. I'm being facetious. That will never be the case. It's not going to be a tit for tat. But let's consider if Canada does boycott the Beijing Games, there is a huge backlash, not only in the international scene, but from China as well, because we're calling them out. We're putting a black mark on this event. I think that the Chinese government, which has a lot of clout and a lot of power, could do even more damage. So I think you got to think of the pros and the cons. I think going to the games, being respectful, playing the political, cards, and rightfully so. Let's hope the two Michaels come back soon. But I don't think they're coming back because this nation is boycotting the Olympics or not.
I think that's probably true. I'm always against boycotting the games because, as Bubba inferred there, it's only the athletes that pay. People that still buy all their components of things, those kinds. If it's part of a larger boycott, I can almost see it. But if it's the only thing, it's not going to do anything. I have a second worry, though. I don't trust the safety of it. I mean, I don't really trust the safety of the Tokyo Games. We don't know where that'll eventually end up when we see what 3 or 4 months from now when we do tracing. But I suspect, given the nature of lying that happens at the very highest level in some countries, the safety risks here could be underplayed a great deal, and that will put these athletes in danger. That said, it's only 3 or 4 months. It's just not even 4 months away now. So I can't imagine that you could pull out, or that you would want to, unless there's a larger boycott on behalf, as there was. We did some boycotts, a number of other things in the Western world about 1980, but it really was the athletes that paid for that, and nobody else. Everybody still got their computer chips. Everybody still got their their cheap toys that they like to buy at the dollar stores. Those kinds of things. Puts the onus all on one place, and it doesn't have an effect.
I understand, and I hate the position almost that I take here, because I understand what athletes have put into this. They put 4 years of work into this. This is what they've given everything, they've sacrificed for. It does hurt the athletes, but I don't know how, with what's going on, I don't know how you can, as an international community, endorse essentially Beijing and give them the glory of the games. And, the IOC makes the point, well, the games are not political. The games are only political. That's why you carry flags. That's why you have anthems. It's all political. And to turn your eyes away and say, well, nothing bad is going on. You get the Uyghur people who are being, bad stuff, and the human rights people are talking about them. You've got Hong Kong, you've got Taiwan, you've got all these things. And then you're going to give Beijing a giant party and say, hey, you're the center and the focus and the celebration of the world. I don't love the idea of a boycott, and I don't want it just as Canada. I mean, to Rick's point, you don't want to be the one tall poppy there in the field of poppies that's going to get your head lopped off. But if there was to be an international coalition that started to talk about this, I would want Canada to be in there.
We'd have to be part of that coalition, but it has not to be just the games. There has to be other economic factors involved in this. And I would not want to see the games isolated on this, because you're going to lose that one for sure. They're going to lose that one. The IOC does not care.
I totally agree. I mean, okay, if we're going to go do this, then that means, as you said, every Chinese product, at least that you can think of, you cannot support. And that goes from clothing to food to anything involved. That
iPhones.
If you're going to do that, your phone,
Absolutely.
all of it. And I'm being serious here. I know I'm being sounding jokey, but that's what it has to be. But I look at it this way, in the sense, you know what? These games, in fact, any games, any Olympic games, any worldwide event, it's a worldwide event. It's not just, I mean, yes, you could say the countries that are hosting it are celebrating some types of culture, and that's exactly what it is, right? It's not really the games of China. It's a worldwide event. It's a worldwide game being held at a particular place. So again, at the end of the day, the only people that are going to pay the price, because the world will go on after the games with the same rules and the same issues and the same problems. We go through this with almost every single nation that hosts the games. There's always something going on. Coronavirus, what's going on, I mean, with political issues in particular countries, Russia. It happens every single games. But again,
why is that then? The IOC, if that's the case, you're not wrong, Bubba. The IOC is doing a terrible job of choosing hosts if that's the case, where every time we have this.
Well, they're changing that around, which is the point that I was going to make. If you can get through this one, you're starting to look at something else a little different here. And I don't mean to make this an East-West situation, but you know, they've already got the summer games laid out, and you know, you're always going to have problems in certain, but they already got the summer games laid out till 32, right? So I think that's one of the issues. I still think this safety thing is quite worrisome to me, because there's been lots of controlled lying about health and safety, and I honestly don't trust the safety issues there.
That could be an issue, Rick.
It's a good point. Yeah, listen, I'm thinking about what's the old saying: those who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Listen, 2026 World Cup in Canada, we have our issues here with the Indigenous population.
Yep.
Any World Cup nation can say, you know what, we're going to boycott because of how you've treated Indigenous peoples over the years. The same could be said for the Indian population in America. Come the 2026 World Cup, there might be other nations to say, we're not going to partake because of this particular issue. You go across and around the globe, every country has something that you can point to say, we don't agree with that, we don't respect this. Might not be to the degree of what's happening in China or other nations, but we have our issues here too.
But Rick, we have the thing with China is Canada has a direct ongoing situation now with the two Michaels. We have two of our citizens, and this came up in Thursday night's English language leadership debate. What do you do about the two Michaels? And every leader who was up on that stage, every hopeful prime minister says, you deal with it very seriously. You have to do kinds of stuff. You know what? If we just say, well, we've got two of our citizens imprisoned improperly in a prison, but we're still going to send our people over for a celebration to have a party on that soil. That just seems,
it's not a party,
with an ongoing. You're right about Indigenous stuff. What?
It's not a party. It's an athletic endeavor.
No,
right?
It's a party.
It's for what? For you to the athletes that have prepared for 4 years, that it's a party, right? Again, I will ask you this question: at the end of the day, if you protest these games, what will be the effect? The effect is 4 years of wasted time for the athletes to prepare.
That's right.
Because the world will go on, the Olympics or that particular event will go on. There is no loss except for the country that boycotts to these games.
I don't know enough about the international part of this. Is there any way to use even just the threat of an outside complaint as leverage for at least in Canada's case, the two Michaels? Is there any
Steve,
diplomatic leverage there?
I want to go to you in a sec, but to answer that question, maybe one of the groups that has, or one of the movements that's been talking about this, it was a letter that came out last week, and it was addressed not just to the countries to boycott, it was calling on all the broadcasters who have paid their rights fees to do the games to refuse to go, especially like CBC and BBC, the ones that are the publicly owned state-run agencies. And so, Steve, I don't know if a country like Canada not going moves the needle at all, because you're still going to get the attention of the world on the games. But if all the broadcasters suddenly said, we're not coming, so you're holding your games with no eyes on it, maybe you've got a fulcrum for some leverage there to do it. But I mean, anyway, Rick, go ahead. I interrupted you.
Listen, I was going to jump on that point, because if you have the likes of NBC, who has a gazillion dollars in this initiative, suddenly say, you know what, we're not going to broadcast the Olympic Games. You know that the IOC is now putting some pressure, at least endeavoring to, on China to say, hey, we got to make this thing happen. How is that going to turn out with the two Michaels? I don't know. I'm not sure that's going to be the flick point to turn the switch on that situation. But yeah, if you have the major broadcasters saying we're not coming to the table, that's a huge revenue loss for the IOC, and maybe they start to second guess their relationship with these sorts of countries in hosting future games.
Tokyo's postponement here caused a problem on that, because it pushed it back. The window here is awful short now. I mean, the stuff's already there. I mean, on its way there. It's all they were a whole year behind if they were even going to look at something like this, which I'm not sure they would. They're a whole year behind on that now. We're really at the start of the games. It's 4 months. You know, I don't know if anybody here is going. I'm still wondering if I am, and I don't even know. Like, normally you'd be in the process now of getting all those visas right now. So I mean, you could do some things diplomatically. We're having an election. It's another reason maybe a lot of people didn't want an election. We can't deal with this. So I think timing is a problem here.
Yeah, I know we're talking about the revenue losses of actually pulling out the TV networks. Now, I think we're all crazy here if you think a company like NBC are going to tell their advertisers, sorry, this is not going to happen because of a political reason, and there's a big problem in Canada. Like, it's not even going to happen with the CBC, as you said, publicly owned companies, television network. It's just not going to happen. So this is why I'm saying this is a pipe dream, right? This is all talk. This is all waving the flag. As I said, these special groups drawing attention to themselves, making a ruckus. And again, I understand the point of why they're doing this, right?
I think they should do it. Make the noise. Make the noise. Make the noise. Don't be succumbing. Make the noise. People who protest must protest. And I'm not asking the athletes to do it, but if any that want to, hope they do.
I know, and I agree with you, Steve.
When they're there.
We all have the right to protest. We all have the right to voice our opinions, right? But again, when you tie it in with athletics, that's when you're walking down an interesting in a weird scope, right? And I would love to do a poll of the athletes.
Well, I know what the poll of the athletes would say, Bubba. We all know what a poll of the athletes would say, and that's understandable, because what athlete wants to put the time in?
Thinking about those athletes?
Say that again.
Shouldn't we be thinking about those athletes when we do these kind of things?
That's when I started my comment. That's why I say I almost hate the position that I feel right now, because I understand what the athletes have put in, and I understand a poll of the athletes understandably would be 100% in favor of going, and I don't diminish that as being that they're not socially conscious or anything. I completely understand why they would want it. To Steve's point, there's one other thing here. When Tokyo happened in the summer, you'll recall shortly before the Tokyo Olympics, the IOC put out an ironclad statement that there was to be no protests on the podiums or anything else. I don't believe that had anything to do with Tokyo whatsoever. I think that was having an Olympic run through to make sure we have a precedent, so when we get to Beijing, nobody pulls anything. And yet we did have at least one athlete, I believe it was an American LGBTQ athlete, who did a sign on the thing on the podium, or just off the podium, which was supposed to have violated the IOC's rules. They looked into whether to take away her medal, and then they said, no, we're not going to do that. That's okay. I will be fascinated to see what would happen in Beijing if an athlete got up on stage and did some sort of protest, pulled out a sign, did some sort of hand gesture. Steve's point, you could be, I mean, I don't know, maybe we're overstating it. You could be arrested potentially. I mean, I don't know if that would happen with the eyes of the world on you, but
Could
there's
be.
another opportunity, and that would be really
It
interesting.
did with the Michaels in a certain way. Not everybody was particularly was there. I want to go back to your point, Scott, to support part of it right from the start is that they weren't the organizers of the game, but the Russian Olympic Committee, the Russians, of course, with all the heavy doping and all the things they did and all of that stuff, they couldn't go for Russia, right? They weren't there representing Russia. They couldn't sing songs and that.
Yeah.
But what did they call them? The Russian Olympic Committee. So they actually, the people who perpetrated, the people who perpetrated the crimes, perpetrated, the ones behind it were the ones who got, they were, especially in the first half of the games, they were mentioned about every third sentence on world TV. That didn't hurt them at all. It elevated them. And people themselves, of course, cheer for Russia.
Yeah, and when they won their gold medals, and they won a few in Tokyo, they didn't play the Russian national anthem, but they played some Tchaikovsky tunes.
Yeah.
So they were still in their element, so they were fun.
And how many times did you hear during a gold medal, the Russian Federation, the Russian Olympic Federation, the Russian Olympic Federation? In my mind, when I hear, what do you hear when you hear Russian Olympic Federation? I hear crook.
Yeah. I'll hope that now there's so much more on this one. I mean, we could talk about if there ever was a boycott, would this be the end of the Olympics? Because then would China naturally boycott the next ones and their allies and on and on? I hope that the Canadian Olympic Committee sends out a quiet note to all of its athletes that if you get on the podium or before every race, you do this. Making 2 M's as best you can for the 2 Michaels to keep telling the world that we got to remember why we're here. Because I agree with all of you. I don't think we will boycott. I'd be very surprised if we did, although I truly believe that it's something, unfortunately, we should be considering at this point. What do you think? This is a hugely contentious topic, especially on my radio show some weeks ago. We were talking about this, and I had the mother of an athlete, for all the reasons you guys said, call in and say, you can't do this with all the time. What do you think? Are the social issues, the political issues too great that we have to consider this? Or as Bubba says, boycotts solve nothing. Why do this? Why harm the athletes? Why go through the process and then lose out for no good reason? We'd love to hear from you. Comment, subscribe to these videos, by the way. And by the way, our Twitter handles are up at the end. We'd love to have you comment and get back to us and tell us what you think about what we had to say and tell us what you have to say. Thanks for watching.